All right, guys, we are here. Episode 4 of the Crypto Natives podcast. I am sitting here with a veteran in the crypto space as I become a rookie, but I'm hoping to become a veteran in the crypto podcast space, which this gentleman is also a veteran in. I'm sitting here with Alex Sterk. He is the co-founder of Ubiq, which is a smart contract platform that was created in 2017. And he is also a host of Blocktalk, which is a crypto podcast that dives a little bit deeper into the past history of the crypto world, dating all the way back to, I believe, 2015. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah. It started in the spring of 2015. I just moved to Vancouver, trying to find more people in the crypto space, reaching out. There wasn't too much content online. There wasn't anyone I knew of in the area where I was living, well, where I am now, that was into cryptocurrency. So it was pretty easy to feel kind of like a crazy person where you're like, oh, well, no one around me even knows anything about this. So how am I gonna, learn more if I'm like the only knowledgeable person, so yeah, I decided to take a little trip out west and stumbled across a pretty cool community out there that was already doing some kind of like live podcasting interviews and stuff. Some like old, you can check out the channel on youtube.com/blocktalk. And you'll see like old interviews from Roger Ver, Adam Back, Andreas was even on the show. That was a pretty full house that night. And like it was kind of we were a bit different than most podcasts at the time because we had like this live audience. It was kind of like streaming a meetup. So it was a really good way for developers to kind of get some feedback on their projects, and for community members to ask questions in persons and get more honest answers. And people can be transparent, learn a lot, and just kind of talking about the topics of the day. So I haven't done it in a little bit, but it's kind of like this time capsule, I guess, of the crypto space. So it's kind of fun. I find myself going back and watching little bits of the episodes, and getting those old vibes back of when we were all a little more, I guess,
together.
I don't know if it was undescribable at the time, because like we were kind of in this mind state of like, well, crypto hasn't really had this mainstream validation like we've had today. And I think there was a lot more conviction that was required to be going along with some of the technology and projects and things that were being built at the time. Because like I bought my first coin in spring of 2014. So like I had only experienced the bear market at that point, and like the development cycle that kind of happened in 2015. Like I think that was a really special time because it wasn't so frothy in the market and people were really focused on what they wanted to do, and just kind of experimenting and not really having ulterior motives, because it was kind of like, what can we do with this technology? And sometimes it was just, let's take the Bitcoin code and throw a dog meme on it. And other times it was developing something from scratch. I tried to interview lots of different projects, learn a lot about the different technologies at the time. You can even watch like an episode from the launch day of Ethereum, and we had our miners set up in the room there to kind of be collecting whatever ether we could at the time. It was a lot easier to mine in those days.
Education is the fastest path to building your own product, right? Because that's when you founded or co-founded Ubiq in 2017, but you had a few years of history of just networking within the space for the small community that existed comparatively to now. I tweeted about this a few days ago, speaking on like Bitcoin NFTs comparative to Ethereum NFTs, where a lot of the Bitcoin NFTs, they all intertwine each other's products, where Spells of Genesis is on Rare Pepes are in Saratobi's on Rare Pepe. And I think it just speaks to like the volume of the community back then, that everyone was just banded to create progress. And it wasn't really as much about making the insurmountable amount of money that you can nowadays.
Yeah, people were, I think, doing it for the lulz. Like it was my kind of motivation for a lot of stuff. It was like, we didn't expect to make millions of dollars. We were just kind of like, hey, let's let's see what we can build, some cool stuff, some things that people would want to play with, and help get the crypto word out. Like the Vancouver community is one of a kind. They were the first location of the first Bitcoin ATM. And that's kind of how the meetup space I was involved in, still going today, was created. It was basically people who were hanging out by the ATM and chatting crypto. And then they're like, well, we're doing all right. We could maybe rent out a basement or something and have an actual proper meetup space. So yeah, that's been going to this day. And now there's like a full application, like we call it the AO, the autonomous organization, where we're have this sort of system for managing the community. And baked within that is a lightning code. So now, like our old beer machine that we hacked together with a Raspberry Pi to take Bitcoin, it was doing all transactions on mainnet until the point when it was like $3 to buy a $3 beer. And now we've gone to Lightning. So yeah, kind of helping push the usability forward and getting more people accustomed to it, because you can see how fast and how easy it can be. But also some of the stuff that needed to be overcome. So we're kind of like this beta tester community. And that's kind of how my approach to crypto was really early on. I wanted to be playing with different things. I wanted to try out and see where the technology was going, because like my background of automation and electrical engineering, I really saw that there was a real need for some better kind of ledger technologies and data center tracking. So yeah, well, I dove deep into the crypto train because I was working night shifts, and the only way to stay awake was basically keep on like reading about something that's interesting to you. There's only so much stuff you could do while you're watching cars get built. So yeah, and then the one night we had like 3 hours of downtime because we lost internet connection with Detroit. And it was like, did we like fork off of Detroit? Is that why we're having issues right now? So it was like trying to understand more of like, well, what are the potential implications? And yeah, like I have a farming background too, and I see the technology that's being built every day and the future that it can kind of be applied to all these different really base level economies. Like MoonCats, it's DNA on the chain. It's this kind of pedigree for an animal. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't we have the pedigree for our cattle on chain as an NFT, and like tracking the sort of history and provenance of the animals that way? Like, in my opinion, I think that's where we're going to go. That's where we're going to see a lot more improvements to the technology we've all been working with. Trying to prove that you went to school and got a degree is like, okay, well, you got to phone the school and they'll confirm it. Like this is all very antiquated. And yeah, I think we're getting closer and closer to the future I was envisioning back in 2014. And yeah, every day it seems like there's more stuff of like, oh yeah, this is far closer to what I expect to see.
Yeah, even in this short 10 minutes that we've been recording, I could see where your vision is, where you want to apply the digital world of cryptocurrency into the real world, because the majority of the crypto community exists only digitally. And for those reasons, sometimes it's hard for the people in crypto to relate to those who have no idea about it. In the MoonCat chat, when we first started talking a few months ago, is when you actually posted the vending machine that could be purchased with the Lightning Network. And then now you mentioned with cattle and some of these other things. And also fast forwarding a little bit, I saw on Ubiq, you guys are offering NFTs with the physical composite that's tied along with that. It looks like I could see where like your utility and your vision is.
Yeah, like so a little background on Ubiq. It's kind of like a more approachable Ethereum. It's what the community that I founded with back in 2014, 2015. What we've kind of built now is a more approachable and affordable Ethereum that has all the same features and is maintained by like really top-notch developers who work in the industry. It's no ICO, it's no pre-mine. Like we're doing a fair launch, like supply metrics the same way that Bitcoin is, but we're taking all the technology from Ethereum. So yeah, with that, we got tokens. We launched our decentralized marketplace, like our fork of Uniswap. We launched that about a year ago now. And then now we also have an NFT marketplace. But yeah, the first NFT that we had on available on the Ubiq network were they're physically redeemable for a poster that's shipped to your door. So we actually have one coming up, I think, in the next week here, where we're going to be auctioning off the sixth one. But let me grab one of the ones I managed to get framed. So this is poster 0, and yeah, I bought this on the blockchain and was actually able to have it burned and then minted as a physical piece. So there are only 88 tokens available, and I think about 30 or 40 of these ones have been redeemed. So kind of a deflationary supply.
That is sick. So do you think we're moving to a world pertaining to NFTs where pretty much all real world assets will be in the form of an NFT at a marketplace, and then they could be burned and redeemed for the physical component of whether it's a poster, a t-shirt, a vehicle, building, etc.?
Well, yeah, I think there's this really difficult challenge of keeping things in sync between the real world and the digital world. And a lot of that comes down to the trusted source or the oracle that kind of minted it. So when you have like an auction house, like some Sotheby's, like they can issue an NFT that is attached to the item, or it can even be separate, but it's like, here's the receipt of your purchase. And as long as those two are staying together and the buyers are incentivized to keep them together, like that becomes, yeah, like a validation. And I think you're going to see more and more traditional entities are going to be realizing that they'll have to issue as an NFT or as a token to basically show the provenance of these items. It will be a little tougher, I think, on the lower end of things, because, you know, people will separate the two and try and sell them separately or something. But one of the old interviews I did was with Chronicled, and they were baking in these kind of NFC chips into products to basically show, like, the product can sign for itself to show that it is the legit product. So it's like, oh, I want to buy these nice Nike 2022 shoes, but like I can't trust that they're legit. I could message the seller and like, can you have the shoes signed for this? And like that is the applications we're getting towards. I think it all comes down to standardization, but the way the way that things are going, it's much more ubiquitous as a technology to be issuing these sorts of provenance tools to really capture the history and stuff. Because like I heard that you were you ever had an antique shop, and like things that you have sold from the antique shop, you could issue a digital receipt with, and that will help the value of it long term, in my opinion.
Yeah, when I owned the antique store, I was trying to it was called Next Gen Pickers, and I was trying to tie the old world model into the real world model. And I first got into crypto in 2017, and that was when I opened up my antique store. So we were looking into things like QR codes to try to tie the story to it, also supply tracking. And one thing I didn't realize is that in order to get a license, or at least out here in Nevada, for an antique store, you have to have what's called a restricted license, and you have to get an FBI background check, because a lot of money laundering goes through antiques because there's no database. And blockchain and NFTs can solve that issue for not only the merchant, but the governments who want to track it. Although I know we are all libertarians at heart and hate that. I hate that governments have some oversight. It has to happen.
Well, part of my my conspiracy mind that is going on with the NFT space is that since we're seeing some of the topics that regulators are going to basically enforce KYC for withdrawal addresses. So it's like you have to prove what addresses or who owns the address that you're withdrawing to. So they're trying to extend their reach outside into the blockchain. So we're going to see KYC Ethereum accounts at some point. They're going to try and enforce that. Like it's going to happen. And at this point, like with the way ENS names are going and NFTs basically creating vanity addresses, it's kind of incentivizing people to want to do that. And I think on one hand, it is good. Transparency in the space is kind of a cornerstone of it. Like I always said, Bitcoin is a terrible tool for crime because there's a complete transparent record of it, and most of the mixing tools aren't going to cover it up. So yeah, I think NFTs are kind of an extension of that, where it's like, here is like my fully transparent address, but like, yeah, people need to understand that like any interactions between that address and your other addresses are basically linking them together. Like, one of the news stories that I saw recently was Dapper Labs, the guys who did CryptoKitties. They're basically getting into blockchain analytics. So it's like anyone who owned a kitty is probably part of their data set and is probably something that's being sold to regulators now. So it's like, this is where I think you when you validate projects, you really got to look at like, what are the intentions and the core moralities of the team, because yeah, long term they'll rear their course and you'll see like who like where their principles are basically.
Yeah, even though the anonymity of crypto and transactions may disappear over time, the permissionless nature is still a large improvement from what we have nowadays, where you could just interact with any contract, borrowing and lending, or whatever these DeFi protocols that exist in. But I do think privacy is going to be a big discussion, and also improvement protocols are going to be introduced over time, whether it's with Bitcoin or on Ethereum. I forget what the different EIPs and BIPs were for the different privacy calls, but in regards to Ubiq, have you guys thought about introducing any privacy features?
Yeah. So great way to turn it back around with Ubiq stuff is we've been releasing applications now for the past year of like different things that we consider like blue chip dApps, because the code base is stable, it's well audited, and we feel comfortable offering it to our user base. Like that's kind of our whole mindset of, offer stability in this very bleeding edge technology. So one of the apps that we launched is called Edmaku, which is essentially a Tornado Cash, which is a mixing application on Ethereum, but it's a very expensive application to run on Ethereum. And not enough people are really using it, I think, to really obfuscate or like anonymize your transactions. I'm pretty sure the guy who got caught front running trades on OpenSea, he tried using it, and someone was like, "Well, here's the in and here's the out for the same amount." So it was like, "That's your money." Like we know. So yeah, like we basically have taken that code base and improved upon it, made it more anonymous, and put it on the Ubiq chain. So that's one of our three applications that we have listed on our dApp site. So yeah, we have an NFT marketplace where you can create NFTs for fractions of a penny, and like you can bid on an NFT for $1, and like that's a lot more usable, and it kind of gets people familiar with the whole process of using an EVM. And then we also have the tools to basically do that anonymously, because not everyone wants to tie their identity to their shit posting or their art or their like, because there is, I think, some power in being an anonymous artist and actually building a following without any clout behind it. So I think that's kind of one of the main, synergies that we have in the current dApp ecosystem on Ubiq. Like, yeah, it's pretty sweet to be able to create a new account, withdraw from Edmaku, and not have any sort of attachment to other accounts that you have made. So it really allows for people to have the basic tool set and understanding to be ready for financial freedom and whatever the future is going to hold at us. Because yeah, I'm pretty bullish on the space. Like we're making all-time highs today, but like there's definitely going to be some now they fight you sort of times coming up, I think. So yeah, there's going to be a time where people are going to regret not being more anonymous with things they should have been anonymous with. And yeah, I think that's kind of the future we're always being prepared for, because being in the space 7 years, it's like, things can change on a dime. New people come into power, and now we're forced to basically sorry, got a random fly sneaking in from the field here. Yeah, so I think that's kind of something we really want to offer people so they can better understand what tools are available and how to use them.
Yeah, if you follow Balaji at all, he's a big proponent of the pseudonymous economy that's evolving. And even some of these people who aren't anonymous, between NFT traders or fungible traders, they have a main account, but then they also have multiple anonymous accounts that's where they get their funding fund, and then they buy whatever asset it is, and then they transfer back to the main wallet so that people can't attempt to front run them, because that's, I know in the NFT space, that's a huge issue that everyone is very aware of. I am curious about Ubiq and the smart contract nature and kind of the rollout. I'm sure you've seen this even a little bit more than me, but there's always an Ethereum killer that's introduced every year. There's new smart contract platforms that are evolving, right? To this year, it's Solana. The year before that was BNB. In 2017, it was Neo. And I'm sure even back before then, there was some other smart contracts before then. With all of these new smart contracts that evolve, does it put pressure on Ubiq to be more present or try to upgrade the marketability for the platform? Or is there a specific community that you're trying to attract with the no pre-mon fair distribution nature of it?
Yeah, I think we have really good foundations, and we're in it for the long haul. You know, like a lot of these projects that you mentioned and that we're seeing today are basically startup companies. They're, some of them have VC funding, some are trying to get VC funding, and most of them are basically like modified versions of the testnet code for Ethereum. And yeah, they're running like their nodes and they're pushing out blocks like super fast. Like, and I don't think anyone really grasps that, like, if the company disappears, the blockchain disappears and all the records disappear. Like, one thing that I always, whenever I meet someone who's into Ripple, I'm like, you know, Ripple literally lost the first like 2 weeks of their blockchain where all the pre-mined coins got moved around. It's like, yeah, so the idea that like a proof of stake, I think it is very powerful. And I think in terms of like scaling and being able to have a million or more concurrent users on a platform, it does make a lot of sense. I think that's kind of where there is a future, but there always is going to be a lot of strength to proof of work and the permissionless nature of it, because it is always new members can come in. Like anyone with a GPU right now can mine Ubiq and start getting money into the current the cryptocurrency ecosystem. You could do that with Ethereum too, but like it's going away. They're going to go full proof of stake, and at that point, the only way to get into Ethereum is to buy from someone who's already in the ecosystem, and that's a form of permission. Like if no one's going to let you come in, at least not for a reasonable price, then like it becomes more of a walled garden. And I think all of these current hot platforms right now are basically walled gardens, and they're fully reliant on a central entity that is basically a startup. Like Solana went down for a few hours and people shrug it off. Oh yeah, it came back up. But it's like, no, like the whole point of a blockchain is that it doesn't go down. Like, so with proof of work, there is a lot of resiliency. Like we've seen many examples of networks that just don't die. Like there's always someone that's going to mine them and be pushing out new blocks. And I think that's kind of where proof of work is always here to stay. And as long as there's energy in the market, we're always going to see proof of work. That being said, we're kind of looking at the technology stack of Ethereum. Like we're always pulling over changes that are being well tested, and we see that positioning ourselves as a stable build of Ethereum. We're not an Ethereum killer, we're a complementary network. And I think Polygon has kind of positioned themselves that way a bit too, where they're trying to build an extension onto Ethereum, which is really how this whole system is going to grow. Because we saw early on, like the internet of blockchains is kind of the next iteration of this. And, you know, if Ethereum is the blockchain 2.0, what's the 3.0? And yeah, we're seeing a lot more kind of bridge capable or bridging built in to some of the tech stacks. Like I'm really a big fan of Atom right now. Like it's a pretty seamless experience going between different networks. And I think their ecosystem has enough of developer capital that they're going to be continuing to build out further. And it's basically going to link to the Ethereum ecosystem, and then everything is going to be connected. And yeah, that's kind of the multi-chain future that we're heading towards. And with Ubiq, I think we're going to be like always available there to connect, and our users are always going to have kind of these outstretched bridges to different parts of the ecosystem. So it really comes down to like being a good first landing point for people to get new and accustomed to the technology, the user experience, and be able to explore further. Like we've always wanted to be a very educational based community of like, here's how all of this stuff works, you know, here's what you can expect to happen when you buy an NFT, here's the transactions, like and even from a developer side too, like we've had many community members who built their first like blockchain explorer, or they played around with building a dApp just to kind of get their technology chops up. And now they go on to work in the industry because they have this kind of like portfolio piece that's always around with Ubiq. And yeah, we have many developers that are working in the space, like for big companies and doing really good work. Like, you know, I can think of one other EVM that basically is functioning much better today because of the work that we've done with Ubiq. So it's kind of like we're very much like a portfolio piece, or people have called it a boutique network, where it's maintained by industry professionals who are doing it not for the profit, but because it is their portfolio piece. It is their like, look at what I've done. It's like, show me another developer with my experience and the actual like code that's still being run to this day.
And so when you guys launched Ubiq in 2017, this was during the hype of the ICO bubble, as we like to say, right? All of these white papers were attracting billions of dollars without even a released project. And so you guys decided to go the more Bitcoin route and the MoonCat route, right? With the free distribution, fair distribution, community run effort. Has that idea that you had just talked about, or the vision of Ubiq, stayed the same since the launch in 2017 up until this day? And if it has changed, what was the largest component towards that?
Well, I think there's a current conversation right now related to, monetary policy. Yeah, I feel like Mike Pence here, where he's got the fly just hanging out on me. Well, it's warm here because I have my miner running now to keep me in the fall weather. So now all the flies that have been scattered about the house, sneaking in from the field, are now coming to the heat. But yeah, I'll get the walls all finished up back here, and they'll be out for good. But anyways, so monetary policy has been kind of the biggest thing up for discussion recently, because we had monetary policy baked in from the beginning, and that was kind of one of our talking points of like, you know, Ethereum basically has this council of developers who change the monetary policy like their OPEC without any consideration of what the miners want or any of these other entities in the space. And I think it turned a lot of people off in terms of like a sound investment, because like, oh, Bitcoin has the rules baked in, only going to be 21 million coins. And I don't see that ever changing. And I think right now we have this conversation of like, well, we want to get more hash rate. We want to be more secure. We want to be more ready for bridging, because we have a bridge to Polygon open right now, but we want to open up a bridge to Ethereum. But there's risks that are coming with that. So having more security and then having more availability of blocks is kind of the two biggest things. So we're currently in the discussion phase and testing phase of increasing the block time, so it is closer to Ethereum, and increasing the rewards. So inflation probably will go up slightly, but this basically brings in more miners and more people who are willing to, you know, jump into the space and want to actually utilize Ubiq. They'll have more opportunity to get Ubiq. So that's kind of the biggest change in the fundamentals right now. But I think it makes a lot of sense the way the proof of work in economy is kind of shifting quite a bit. You know, like GPUs are going to be jumping around to different networks, trying to figure out where they want to land, because Ethereum is eventually going to cut them out. Like, and if there's going to be Ethereum Classic 2.0 with the proof of work Ethereum keep going, I don't think that's going to be long-term viable, not without like some really key players who are going to stay with it long. Like even Ethereum Classic, it's like it's really just powered by bitterness. Like
Yeah, and
people
it's been
are mad
51%,
at.
and
Sorry?
it's been attacked multiple times too.
Yeah, like they were getting 51% attacked for a little bit, and then one of our core devs decided to implement some changes for them that kind of solved a lot of their problems. So I don't know if that really gets covered enough in the press, but yeah, so our team is helping maintain Ethereum Classic right now, kind of as a contract work.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a large distribution of miners that are going to be looking for some network to mine on once Ethereum 2.0 comes, whenever that actual day is. It's very similar to like when China closed down Bitcoin mining and they all decided to flee to Texas, at least for the most part, because that's where the cheapest energy was, and they can optimize and have a little bit more free reign to experiment within the city and the state.
Yeah, well, it's proof of work is more of a powerful tool for these kind of more controlled government or countries. Like we've had a couple community members over the years who are from Venezuela, and you know, like being able to throw up an old GPU and mine on their network is a lot of freedom for them, and a lot. It's a powerful tool for them to be able to, you know, have financial sovereignty. So I think that's where, you know, you have this base level community, but then yeah, you have this more extended community now that's growing and becoming a big part of the conversation. Is the energy market is now becoming deeply intertwined with proof of work, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or like GPU based or ASIC based. Like this was another thing that really drove me in early on, because as an electrical engineer, we learned pretty early in our course that the grid is a very complex ecosystem of different power and different loads and different dynamics, and renewables are not making it more stable. Like nuclear is the most stable power source that we have right now. If you look at the power generation graph, like nuclear is always a flat line because they can't change the output on a dime. And then yeah, every day like it spikes when everyone turns on their AC or their heating. So I think Bitcoin and proof of work, it's a very powerful tool in terms of a grid level load in order to dissipate excess energy within the grid. So like part of my investment now has been in a couple of these public companies that are doing mining, because they're working with grid operators and they're basically helping balance the grid. So in some cases, they're getting paid to take electricity to mine. And like that's always how I viewed it. Like I run my couple GPUs here basically right now to heat my house. I don't really care how much Ubiq I mine with it, but it's like now my keyboard's nice and warm. And I don't.
Yeah, I always saw Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of Bitcoin owners see it as a multifaceted utility. I always saw the primary use case outside of money as an incentivization for energy innovation. And we see this with the Bitcoin Mining Co., where they're taking the flares and turning it into energy and mining that. And now with all the renewables, whether they're unbalanced or not, they're adding new efficiencies. Well, they will become more efficient and more utilities over time to get the most amount of energy per kilowatt or whatever the unit of measure is over time. So it's cool to see Ubiq doing that as well, because we know it's powerful and proof of stake is permissioned at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think long term we're gonna try and maybe have sort of a binary chain sort of thing. Like we're probably take the Cosmos SDK, like the Cosmos. It's called Tendermint on the back end, but it's basically like IBC, in inner blockchain connections. So having that kind of as our outreach tool to all the other networks. So like we have a governance token, and like we've been talking lots about like what sort of functionality do we want for it in the long term. And I think having like an IBC network that is connected to the proof of work Ubiq is kind of a really good way to be interconnected within the ecosystem and provide a lot of rails for people to move along. So that, yeah, like binary chains or hybrid is a really powerful tool. Anyone who wants to read more about the consensus and like how it can be done differently, like looking at Decred. Like Decred is a very old project that is doing some really good sort of Bitcoin 2.0 stuff, like where, you know, how can Bitcoin be more secure, and like, so they're help, like it's run by a couple old core devs who got salty over the fork happenings back in 2015, but they're building a lot of really powerful tools that can then come back into Bitcoin. And like that's where, you know, like maximalism is kind of a zero-sum game. Like the more we proliferate and like get people involved in their different aspects and allow for innovation to be untethered, the more that Bitcoin is going to grow. Like Bitcoin is where it is today because Ethereum exists. Like you have to make that assumption now, because, you know, the industry has grown so much because of Ethereum.
Yeah, I like that you said the untetherment of innovation, because that's exactly what crypto is. And there's a lot of experimentation, even with the simple things of Dogecoin, which I know you're a big fan of. I was a big fan of. I was acquiring it for a long time. It kind of brought meme culture into the spotlight or on the grand stage. And now you can profit. People realize that you could profit off of memes. And now the memes have kind of transgressed over to NFTs, and Rare Pepes was kind of like a big example of the first meme NFT. And so the meme economy has grown because of this proliferation of innovation, even on the most like simplistic level of just putting a dog on essentially what Jackson Palmer called it was like a test net or a joke coin.
Well, for me, it was my test coin. Like I bought Doge as my first cryptocurrency because I was like, well, I need to understand this better. And before I go wiring money to an exchange, before I even know what I'm about to be playing with, like, well, what can I buy, or where can I buy it? I'm like looking around trying to find a way to buy Bitcoin in an easy, cheap way that didn't look too scammy. And then like while I was on eBay looking for it, I'm like, oh, well, here's someone selling Dogecoin. Like if someone's scamming with Dogecoin, like it's, I feel like the percentage is lower. It's like, and me throwing $35 at an eBay purchase, I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens here. And the seller had messaged me to sort out all the sales. He had sent me like 100 Doge, just like, okay, did you get it? Is your wallet working? Are you able to send it now? Like, it was much more of a welcoming experience and less stressful, because there was a funny dog coin attached to it, instead of, you know, playing around with Bitcoin. Like I felt like I would have been destroying something of value, but like with Doge, it was like, it doesn't really matter. Like it's, you know, funny money. And like now it's like Doge has ascended to this like new status of like meme. Like people want to talk about what is the Mona Lisa of memes, or the Mona Lisa of NFTs. Like I think it's probably the Doge photo. The original, like the centerpiece one. But yeah, it's something that's never gone away. And like Doge has always been a very fundamental kind of artery for the space. Like, and any exchange that had a Doge pair, you knew it was legit. And like for a long time, Binance didn't even have Doge listed. They're like, oh, there's no team, there's no person we can charge a listing fee to, like we don't need it. But now it is everywhere because of like it people are realizing it's kind of like a badge of honor. Like, and I fully supported it early on. You know, like I thought Doge was pretty cool, and like I thought it was a good way to kind of get people interested in Bitcoin. Like, here, let me send you a dog coin, and then you know what the experience is like. And I think that's the same thing we're trying to do with Ubiq. Of like, you want to learn how Ethereum works? Okay, well, here's an Ethereum like experience that doesn't cost you $30 every time you want to, you know, try something. So yeah, I think that these are very important to get people more confident in using the technology, becoming more familiar with it, and helping standardize it.
Yeah. Doge, Doge also is something that's a simple dog coin, but to me, it's like the altcoin VIX, right? When Doge is going ballistic, then altcoins are probably about to go ballistic right after it. And then it always trickles down, just like how Bitcoin trickles down to ETH and so on and so forth. Do you think the Doge phenomena is here to stay? I mean, now we have Shiba Inu, which is like pumping as well, which maybe doesn't have as strong as a community. It maybe has a little bit more of the frequent or high frequency traders. What do you think is the next step for Doge?
Well, I always look at the Bitcoin pair chart, and I think that part of the chart is probably going to be a downtrend for a bit. That being said, I do think Doge is going to hit $1 or more, but like Bitcoin is going to be worth 100K or more. Like that's where you have to look at both sides of this marketplace, because there's a lot of people who only think in Bitcoin terms, and then there's the rest of the market that seems to be really obsessed with USD. And like that's not where like the whales are at. Like the really OG whales they're always thinking in Bitcoin terms. So I think I think it will keep going. I think there's enough people who are overly invested in it now, who like have an emotional attachment to it. That being said, like I'm in that boat too, but like a trade is a trade. Like I sponsored 2018 DogeCon in Vancouver. I was the first principal sponsor of it, and yeah, like it always held a special place in my heart, and I would always watch it to get a better idea of where the market's at. And yeah, I was very rewarded for it at the beginning of the year. So I think it's something that I always check regularly. Like it's a very good barometer for the space, because yeah, in the beginning it was like the arbitrage tool between every exchange. Like you didn't use Bitcoin or Litecoin, you always used Doge, because it was 1 minute transfers between exchange. It was highly liquid because it traded on Satoshi values. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna buy a whole bunch at 40, and then I'm gonna transfer the exchange and sell it at 39. Like that was the spread, and it was very baked in. It's a lot weirder now that it's in 3-digit territory, but
yeah, that's terrifying. And I was the same, where anytime it was under 20 sats for all through 2019, 2020, I was buying. And then once it hit up to like 150 sats, I was like, there's no way this is going to keep going, sold everything. And that was a terrible mistake. But I took half of those profits and ended up investing it into MoonCats, which is where we met, which is funny because it kind of goes along the same lines of this whole entire conversation about fair distribution, no pre-mine, very grassroots, community driven. I'm curious, what brought you or attracts you to MoonCats, and also to be somebody who is like fairly active in the Discord and community as well?
Yeah. So very similar trade, pivot from Doge to cats. But yeah, no, I had some friends that mentioned like, hey, check out this contract. The site's still up. I'm like, oh, this is super cool. Like you get to choose the art. I was like, because I had been following the NFTs, and I had a couple that I guess are NFTs from the past, but like I hadn't been like actively minting anything or really participating, but I was like, okay, this is kind of sweet. I'm like generating cats. I'm like saving a couple seeds. I'm like, oh, like let's see if I can find a Ubiq cat, like looking for a nice green one. I ended up finding an orange tabby. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll mint this one. Yeah, and then like before I knew it, the rest had all like sold out. I'm like, okay, well, it didn't go as fast as like the other gas wars that we had been seeing. I'm like, well, this was a pretty good like metric or like system for a drop, like user generated. And then like this proof of work element really helped kind of like level out the playing field, where people who wanted to have, more cats or nicer looking cats would have to, put in the work to actually find them. And we're starting to see it a bit more now with other projects with more user curated generative art. And I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's probably one of the better ways to go about it, because more often than not, the minter is very happy with what they choose to mint. And there's a lot of projects where people are just buying lotto tickets and basically they're hoping to get the winning one, and then they want to dump it right away. And like that doesn't appeal to me really at all. Like it's, I don't know, where's the fun in that? And yeah, I really liked the MoonCat story. I think it really, like, only in NFTs where does being first like the first mover, like, you know, maybe they didn't get market success. They weren't the hot cat of 2017, but they were, you know, still able to succeed because of how the blockchain works, because their sales store was like, or the generator contract is always up. And like, that's very powerful. And I think it's a really good narrative for the space. And I think it's something I would like to succeed. And like looking more on the team and the history of it, I'm like, oh, this is way better fundamentals than CryptoKitties ever did. Like, so I was at was it EdCon or ETH Waterloo, where the hackathon happened, where CryptoKitties happened, and like I can see why it blew up. You know, the who's who of the Ethereum ecosystem was there, because ETH started in Waterloo down the road from me, and yeah, it made sense that like, okay, these cats that could be reproduced by having two of them, like people are gonna go crazy and it's just gonna explode. And yeah, now there's like 2.5 million cats out there. And it's kind of funny that one of the auction ones right now is basically one that had never bred, because that's really the only value point I think you can see in that collection now. But I really like yeah, the fundamentals of MoonCats. I think from a legal standpoint, it's probably the most best structured NFT projects out there. And from random readings and interviews, it sounds like one of the team that actually has a legal background. So it's like a lot of the NFT projects I'm scanning through and reading white papers on, I'm like, none of these guys have talked to a lawyer. Most of them are like just graphic designers who hired a contract dev, and like that's basically the extent of the project. Which there is, you know, there is value to that. There is good art coming out of that. There's a lot of abuse happening, and I think Coinbase has really hit their mark here too with supporting the project. I think in terms of a long-term something that is going to be favorable to regulations, MoonCats is probably one of the better NFTs that can really succeed. And it's, you know, pixel art, I think is a lot more attainable for building something that is engaging long-term. So like if they're going to build games, like pixel art's a pretty good platform to go with. I just hope it's not turn-based. Like basically every blockchain game is like turn-based right now, and I want something more engaging and faster paced. Like the sports ball game is going to be like, I don't know, like 2D Rocket League. Like that would be the cat's ass. Like I would love that.
I would, yeah, I wouldn't doubt Ponderware anyway. And they're scaling pretty fast as well. They hired more team members, and they have very, very, very intelligent devs. But I didn't even think about that point that you're talking about, that listening to the Coinbase spaces with Ponderware, Ghosts, and the other artists, all of those people had fair launches. So that was probably advisement on the legal side of Coinbase to not go after any of these newer projects that have some sort of token that's evolved, that's yield generating, or these like very lavish roadmaps that kind of infer that there's going to be some incremental price increases over time. Especially too with, I know Coinbase is getting into like the analytics side, and they're also forming lobby groups within the US government. So you have to be very wary. And also to tie the NFT space now to 2017 when Ubiq started, NFTs we all know is frothy. Where the top is, who really actually knows? But do you think some of these NFT projects are going to have some sort of lawsuit against them from the US government, similar to like what we saw in 2017?
Yeah, I think definitely some projects are going to be in trouble. Like I've already saved a couple white papers that now are no longer on their websites of different projects, because it's like, guys, this is, you were not getting legal representation while you wrote this stuff. Like that is basically what I'm reading here. It's like, so I think, yeah, a lot of projects are going to get their hands slapped. It's probably going to take a long time. Like news today, OneCoin stuff is being prosecuted, and like BitConnect stuff. Like we still haven't even seen the payout from Mount Gox, like, or Cryptopia. Like the traditional world just moves at a much slower pace. And I think a lot of these guys are like, well, we might get in trouble, but that's like 10 years down the line. It's like, okay, well, it's kind of long-term thinking, I guess. Yeah, I think one of the big barriers or challenges will be like getting more ubiquity or like user engagement beyond like the price tag of the underlying asset. Like, like I like MoonCats, like I rescue one. I bought two more because I wanted to get some loot prints. And I think getting people to justify buying like a $4,000 cat is kind of tough. But if there's like this extended kind of use case for them, because I've seen like other people in the industry use to do build staking stuff or revenue generating things, and like that's the permissionless nature of it. And I think Pondaware needs to be really thoughtful on how they want to structure it. And I think if they're working with Coinbase, they're going to be getting the best representation. They want to build like a system where when you put your MoonCat into the game, whatever that means, like it can also be rented out while you're not playing with it. So it's generating revenue from other players who are paying to earn with that, or like that's kind of where I can see more people being able to justify buying like a $5,000, $4,000 NFT to be playing with stuff. So it's going to be really tough, but I think there's a lot more players now involved in the regulatory side of the NFT space, because now it's like it's touching on loot boxes, it's touching on pre-orders, it's touching on all these very established like products that have been out there in the traditional world. And for them to say NFTs are the ones, sorry, I lost my camera.
You're all good.
Yeah, I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of these traditional players who are going to be going to bat to defend NFTs, because it basically is their same business model from the last 10 to 20 years. So it's a little different than what the ICO phase is. There's definitely some overlap. There's definitely some of the same people perpetuating the same scams, but there's definitely gold in it. And, I'm buying some stuff I like today, but I'm definitely like watching, because it's like there's going to be some real gems in the bear market that are like, this is going to be where you'll see some really good stuff come out. And like I said, it's all going to be coming back, technology that's being proven for the farm. Gaming has always been a very good way to test a lot of these systems, because you can put real value behind it, but it's like, real value, and, if that circles around to pedigrees for the animals, or like I can build my own futures contract using something that was like built for virtual wheat, I can use that to make a real wheat contract. Like, so yeah, this is the kind of innovation that I like to see. And yeah, I think I think the NFT space is a really good like incubator of a lot of different ideas and technologies and talent coming into the space. Just invest with caution. It's fun to play with, but like I wouldn't really be like expecting major returns out of NFTs in the long term. I think it's kind of like something you really, or in the short term. I mean, I think the flippers are probably the biggest drain on the industry right now.
Yeah, and we see it, and it brings a lot of kind of travesty to the community, because you really see who's over invested when they're talking about the floor price consistently, and you're like, man, you were over leveraged. I'm really sorry, because this is a long term game. This is kind of why I stay in the realm of like the vintage, even though vintage is 4 years at this point, which is crazy to hear. The vintage NFTs and like the Bitcoin NFTs, where I know you had one of the gentlemen from Spells of Genesis back on Blocktalk back in the day, and they had a game component to it as well. And so, those kind of things probably are safe from regulatory concern, because there was no ICO or whitelist or any of these other mechanisms that are being installed into the NFTs that kind of gate it off and show that there's favoritism being shown or displayed to some of the investors in the project.
Yeah, like it really comes down to just like the underlying structure. And I think, Pondaware's got it done really well, where like I love the interview where they said, oh, we didn't, make sure that we were getting paid out for Genesis sales. I'm like, oh, but that's genius. Because in the long term, you guys never sold any cats. Like this is basically a contract that you deployed. And now like, they built a wrapper, and that's where their revenue generator is. And like the underlying asset and like the generation and the community, like that is all done decentralized, and they're able to basically build a tool set that they can earn off of. And that's something like we never saw with, regular altcoins. It's like the team isn't getting paid for the daily volume on the exchange. But like with NFTs, it's like, yeah, there's a revenue generator right there just with interest and turnover. And I think long term, like it makes a lot of sense. The incentive structure is way better because it's not just front loading, giving the team money and like hoping that they deliver a product. It's like, no, the harder they work and the better they make it, and the more people that are getting involved and the higher the prices, the more that they make. So it's like this is where I'm very excited for NFTs, and I think it's going to show a lot more people what the real power of this industry is.
Yeah, there's a lot of utility. This is something that I've been experimenting out here in Las Vegas as well, is trying to onboard people who have no crypto knowledge, but are artists of some nature, to build them an NFT that has some sort of utility that isn't just about number grub technology as we all want it to be. And then moving past NFTs, and we've gone through, smart contract platforms. Is there any new features or ideas that are being introduced into the crypto space that's caught your eye, or or any improvement proposals that have been introduced that you've been watching?
Yeah, like I've been looking at the roll up stuff, like optimism. I think that's probably one of the better ways we can scale with Ethereum and trying to get it to the next users. But like, there's a lot of risks associated with new stuff. Like I always like looking at the new stuff, and I like seeing stuff built with it. I might even play with it a bit, but it's very like, I'm very reserved with touching new stuff. Like because yeah, it's like that's where all the risk is. There's not enough value behind it. So I think rollups and like Ethereum 2.0, like I'm really excited for it, but it also makes me more bullish for Ubiq because there's a whole new slew of risks associated with it. So it's kind of nice that we can offer a stable platform to basically allow developers to build with the tools that have been established. It's like if Pondaware wants to build their game on Argumentum or Optimism, like that's great. It's good for them, and I imagine that they have the skill set to build something very compelling with that. But like, if these guys have been learning and building with Ethereum for the last few years, like it's pretty hard for them to say, let's build our entire new game on this experimental new feature, when it's like, okay, why not bridge to a cheaper network that basically has all the same fundamentals as Ethereum, and and there's no real contract risks of things like variables that they're not familiar with. Because if they've been working and building in the space for 3 years, like they're going to be able to deploy on mainnet Ethereum fine, but there's a cost associated with that. So I think that's where Ubiq could be a great option for them too. Like how funny would it be to be running a GPU to basically play a pixelated cat game, because like you're getting the Ubiq to pay for the gas. Like I think that would be a great use case for them.
Huh, that's so interesting. I love the intertwinement and the relation of MoonCats being very easy entry level NFT to Ubiq being a very easy, understandable, digestible smart contract platform as some of these become more complex. So we're coming up on an hour. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you'd like to share? Maybe some new things that are coming to Ubiq?
Yeah, so I'd say check out Token Gallery, token.gallery. It's built by one of the or two of the members from the Curio team, like the original team and artists. Have basically built an NFT platform that runs on Ubiq, and it's truly non-fungible. There are no order books per se. Like if you make a 10 edition item, you can own edition 6. Like it's always edition 6. So yeah, and if you want to mint an NFT, like it's a great place to start. And then yeah, we got some other toys to play with. So yeah, I don't know if you have people who are interested and they want to learn more and want to get the sort of experience, like that's something that we're happy to help with. And then we're getting our next kind of projects going. We did I don't know if you're familiar with the N project. It was like similar to Loop, but it was just numbers. And people are using it for generative art. So we basically did a fork of that and have that available for people to mint. And then the Ubiq is basically burnt from it. So it's kind of a way of combating inflation, is having some projects that actually burn Ubiq. And then we're trying to get our kind of profile pick project off the ground, but we want to get a more open marketplace, kind of supporting the NFTs that we already have before we launch kind of like the Ubiq punks. I don't want to say it's the same as punks, because we put a lot of work into making them different and 16-bit instead of 8-bit.
I love it.
But they look good. I like them. I'm probably going to rep one, and I've had the same profile pic for 8 years now. So
it's your eye. You've had the eye of the storm. Like, this guy's staring at me. I love it. For all those who are listening, where do I send them to follow you and learn more about Ubiq?
Yeah, so I'm at Alex_Sterk, Sterk, on Twitter. You can check out my podcast, Block_Talk, and it's got all the links there. For Ubiq stuff, we have the Ubiq Smart. I tell people, at least make an address, because like that's like making an email address in like 1995.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we're at, and yeah, feel free to check us out. Shoot us any questions. Any collabs. If you guys want some testnet coins, or you want some mainnet coins, that will have a bit more of an asterisk attached to it. I want to see some good stuff before I give away some of my mining revenues, but definitely want to see more people building. And I think Ubiq is a tool for it.
Absolutely believe that as well. It's a good entry level for all of those like myself that understands the technology but has no idea how to code specifically. But these conversations is how we can all continually build and understand and onboard those who are intimidated by crypto, because I know that's something that's prevented a lot of my friends, is the numbers, the maximalism, the minimalism, and everything weird and in between. So Alex, thank you for sharing your time with us. I know I'll be seeing you in the MoonCat Discord and out on Twitter. So thanks. And I hope you can get that fly out of your room and continue working on the farmland.
Yeah, my pleasure. And congrats on having some stuff at Sotheby's this week. Yeah, really proud.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.